Four of Europe's largest economies are now calling on Brussels to hit back harder against unfair trade. France, Italy and the Netherlands and Spain say the EU needs new trade weapons, apparently in response to China. It's a paper that sounds the alarm on trade partners with industrial overcapacity. Some of the proposed remedies: broader anti-dumping measures, more powerful safeguards, higher threshold of local content. It's all going to be considered on Friday as whether or not it should move forward. Bown is with me, the author of How to Win a Trade War. He was the chief economist of the US State Department under President Biden. It is an exceptionally lively read, Chad, for a trade book, which now seems to be the hallmark of it. But at the end of the day, I mean, what we are experiencing from Liberation Day is the equivalent as having been told the earth is flat. All our orthodoxies that you and I grew up following were thrown out the window.
That's exactly right. The world has changed, perhaps forever. And what we try to do in this book is to explain why it's changed and then help to lay out a roadmap for everybody to understand what to do about it. And as you mentioned, Europe is thinking hard about this right now. They're contemplating what to do with all of these imports coming in from China, especially. And part of the book is walking through that, saying how in this new world, you've got to tackle those kinds of problems that a major economy like China introduces.
Right, but what the book points out is when you are the largest bully on the block, as in the US or in China's case to a certain extent, you have a leverage that others don't have. And when you have the sclerotic decision-making process of the Union, you're not helped either.
That's right. I think the challenge the European Union is confronting today, or at least one of the big challenges they face, is they're actually fighting a trade war on two fronts. And the first one, the one that's being waged against them by the United States and by President Trump, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because when it comes down to it, Europe and the United States confront similar challenges, have the same basic concerns when it comes to China. China's excess capacity for industrial production, Europe and the United States' reliance, excessive dependence on China for certain products like rare earths and permanent magnets that it weaponized last year. The two need to do something on it together, and right now, Europe is being forced to go at it alone.
So Chad, do you believe that we've seen a fundamental change in the trading system as a result of what President Trump has done? Something that will not easily, and I'm not just talking about whether we're talking about multilateralism and the WTO, etc., but that actually this idea of the US being aggressive on trade, we're not going back, as Mark Carney talked about at Davos, we're not going back to the old days.
We're definitely not going back to the old days. I think one of the big challenges that we all need to understand, though, is this isn't just a President Trump thing. Because if you believe that, then you might think that, well, if we get past 2028 in the next election, maybe the world will go back to the way it was. And the issue really is it's not about President Trump. The really big concern has to do with China. Its economic system is very different from ours. And it wants a world where other countries are reliant on China for our supply chains, but China is not reliant on the rest of the world for their supply chains. And to be able to take advantage of those fundamental, non-dependencies to their advantage. And that's just not a world that we're used to. It's not the world that the trade system was set up to accommodate, but it is the world that we now have to confront.
Do you see the president, the US president, as being conflicted? On the one hand, he does like strong leaders and the strongman principle, but he's never liked China when it comes to trade. He has railed, it was the Japanese at one point, but he has railed against the Chinese for years, if not decades, on their trade policy. And now he finds himself somewhat conflicted because he also does like this very strong put forward.
I think that's right. And I think the other big challenge confronting President Trump is the easiest way out of this. Many of these problems that the United States faces with China today would really be if the United States didn't go at it alone. that if it really did work with countries out there that have the same interests, right? If you're thinking about rare earths, in the shortages we faced last year, there are countries out there that have had more success that we could learn from and that we could team up with. Japan and Australia have a head start in tackling some of these problems. So I think the big challenge, but President Trump, he doesn't really like working with others, doesn't really seem to like relying on the strength of others. And I do think that needs to change if the United States is going to make progress in tackling the really, really big problem that is China.
Right, I will add a postscript, Chad, to that. Not only does he not like it, but he's also pissed them all off with his own attacks. And so they turn around now and say, oh, why would I? Anyway, but we'll talk about that more in the future. I'm grateful, sir. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.